Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Muslim CEO show. Our vision is Muslims leading the way in solving the world's biggest problems. So, this is the perfect place for you if you want to become an amazing leader and grow your business or organization to the next level. We do this by learning from those that have been here, been there, done it, and bought the Shawarkamis. I'm your brother and host, Mohammad Arshad, and today I'm truly honored to have with me the inspiring Haroon Mota. Assalamu alaikum, Haroon.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thanks for having me on the show.
No problem. How are you doing today?
Alhamdulillah, very well.
Good.
I've
I'm
forgotten
really,
what
really
day of fasting we're on, but
you're on
going strong, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Well, we're going to talk all about that, inshallah. So I'm really, really excited to have you on the show because you've been part of some really, really amazing projects, and you've been to some really, really special places that most of mankind has never been to. So for those of you that don't know, let me give you a quick background. Haroon is head of challenge events at the award-winning Penny Appeal charity. He studied sports and exercise science at university and now has over a decade of community fundraising experience. He's done everything from trekking, cycling, running marathons in Palestine, and even climbing Mount Everest. What's even more commendable is that he is planning to run 260 kilometers in Ramadan while fasting, mashaAllah, tabarakAllah. So there's so much more that I could say, but let's save it for the show. So, Harun, I want to begin with the question that I ask everyone right at the start, which I don't tell them about before, by the way, is what was 10-year-old Harun like?
Wow. 10-year-old Haroon, 1995. Um, I was a rather little naughty, cheeky little Haroon in my house. I grew up in a very sort of strict Islamic household. My father, he's from, well, he's passed away now, but was from India. And Islam, prayer, faith was paramount. And, my father used to take us to the mosque. My elder brother, he went to Darul Uloom to study to become Hafiz and Alim, and that was soon to be my journey as well. And at that time, at the age of 10, I was like, God, I don't want to go. So I was kind of, I don't know, I was kind of finding my way a little bit. But I think even from a very young age, I absolutely adored sort of sports. I wasn't really active as such, but I did a little bit of taekwondo in my young age. But I knew that physical activity, exercise, sport was going to be something of my future.
And is that the kind of thing that you hoped that in your future, like that would be the main thing about you? Or did you have any other profession or any other thing in your mind that you wanted to be when you grew up?
I think at that age, I had no direction, no idea at all what I wanted to do for future. I know I liked sport, I liked football, I loved martial arts, but I never ever thought that would be the making of me. And I heavily got involved into lots of different sporting activities and martial arts and whatnot. But yeah, I guess Allah plans best, and here I am today.
Amazing. So it's actually interesting because you're someone whose journey I've been kind of following for the last few years, and mainly because of the great work that you've been doing. So now, like you're head of challenge events, and we'll go into what that is all about and how that works at Penny Peel and everything. But I just want to understand your journey from being of age 10, and then from there, like your path for study, what you chose, and then how did you get into this whole charity stuff?
So I finished my GCSEs, started doing my A levels, and I think even at the time of A levels, I was clueless with regards to what I wanted to study for future. I just didn't know where to go. I mean, I'm one of seven siblings in my family, and my elder brother, like I mentioned, he went to Darul Uloom, to an Islamic school, to study Hifz and to become an alim. And I was kind of second in line. So no one from my family had been to university, for example. So that was kind of unprecedented in my household. I too went to Darul Uloom for a couple of years. I only lasted a couple of years, but I did memorization of the Quran, alhamdulillah. And then I went back into mainstream school, A levels. In my first year of uni, I actually studied aerospace systems engineering. I was very good at maths and physics, and I thought, engineering would be a good field to kind of apply my skills to. But I just didn't enjoy. the study. So after the first year of study, I dropped out and I thought, you know what, sport and exercise science is where my passion is, and I wanted to kind of understand how the body works, the science and the physiology, the anatomy, and that's what I ended up studying. And I think post-study, I think my initial sort of ambition was to maybe work in sports therapy, or in the health sector, working maybe in cardiac rehabilitation, or even sports coaching, teaching. I was kind of quite broad in what I wanted to do, and I ended up wanting to become a PE teacher, but that didn't quite materialize. I was quite heavily involved in community youth work at the time. But anyway, I ended up working in a hospital in London, at UCLH Hospital, as a senior youth support coordinator. I used to travel from Coventry to London every day to offer recreation and therapeutic support for young people who have cancer. So I was doing that for 5 years until Penny Appeal headhunted me. But I think I probably missed out a big chunk of charity. I actually became involved in charity and fundraising probably just before university. I used to volunteer for Islamic Relief at the time, and I had a massive passion for community fundraising. And I guess I built up so much community fundraising experience through voluntary work, but I never ever aspired to work for a charitable organization. I wanted to do this voluntary. It was only because Penny Appeal approached me at a time that I was looking for change, and this is when I kind of opened up to the idea of working professionally in fundraising, and that's what I've been doing for the last 4.5 years now.
Amazing. So I wanted to ask you something just about your earlier journey, because you kind of mentioned that you went in and you studied something for about a year, but then at that point you kind of decided, no, I don't want to do this, right? And that's quite interesting, because a lot of the people I speak to who've done great things like yourself, mashallah, like they're the same. Like they had the courage to like make those kind of decisions, because a lot of people would have been like, well, look, I've done a year, like I should just finish this now, right? So what was it that kind of motivated you? How did you kind of make that decision that look, I'm going to just go from here to this path and I'm going to go down that route?
I think before I actually studied, or before I signed up to university, I had two paths to go down. One was the engineering, and one was sport and exercise science. And it was a bit of a dilemma. I ended up going with the engineering. And when I realized that was wrong, I think it just made sense to transfer and go back to what I had planned. And it was very much in my conscience, thinking, God, I've wasted a year. That's a year's a long time.
Yeah.
But I thought, you know what? Allah plans best. Maybe there's a reason why I took the wrong path, and maybe there's something of learning that I've taken on, whether it's skills or communication, or experience of whatever it might be. And I decided to go into sport and exercise science, and I never looked back. And alhamdulillah, it was a degree course for 3 years, and it's really kind of shaped who I am right now.
Amazing. And you mentioned that you kind of got into charity around about the time when you were in uni and stuff. Like, do you remember why you got into it? How did it start? Like, what was the interest for you?
It's a bit of a strange story, actually. I actually like telling this story. Some people might call it a coincidence, but I think this is true destiny from Allah, and truly He plans best. I was actually on a mountain, trekking down Mount Snowdon, and I used to hike for leisure back in the days. This was at a time over 10 years ago when, hiking amongst the Muslim community was very uncommon. Right now everyone's hiking, particularly because of the growth of the Muslim charity sector, and everyone climbs Mount Snowdon, for example. It's so common, but back then it was very uncommon. So I used to hike, and I'd never bump into Muslim people on a mountain, and you'd hardly bump into any Asian people. But on this one particular time, I was coming down Mount Snowdon, and in the far distance, when people are so far, they look like ants.
Yeah.
What I saw was like brown faces, and
Okay.
and I thought, no, that can't be right. And as we got closer, as I descended, and as these people were coming up, I realized that these were colorful faces because they had hijabs on their heads.
Wow. Okay.
So there were a group of Muslim women on a mountain, and I was like, nah, like maybe I'm seeing things.
Yeah.
So I found it really bizarre because in years of hiking, never bumped into a single Muslim person, and now I'm seeing a group of Muslim women. So when we met, I spoke to the group leader, a brother called Imran, and he told me that they were from Islamic Relief,
Mm.
and they were from Birmingham, and they were hiking for their Action for Africa appeal, and something really triggered my head. I was like, wow, like Muslim women hiking a mountain, raising money for charity, and I'm thinking, God, I've been hiking for several years for leisure, just for the fun of it. Why don't I, you know, get involved in charity? I exchanged contact details with the brother at the time, and I thought I'd never hear from him. But a few weeks later, he messaged me about a charity dinner and asking me to sell some tickets. So that was the start of me getting involved in community fundraising, shaking buckets and helping at charity events. And I really built up a passion for community fundraising then. And I ended up signing up to my own sort of fundraising challenge event. And this was the first ever sponsored challenge I did. I signed up to trek to Mount Everest base camp.
Wow.
I was in my final year of university at the time, and it just seemed like a cool thing to do. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to graduate from university, head to the Himalayas. Didn't even ask my parents. I just signed up, Bismillah, let's do this. And I really got hooked on fundraising. I managed to raise like £20,000 that year. I was in my final year of university. We didn't have Twitter and WhatsApp and Instagram and all of that back then. So I kind of got myself so busy in fundraising and asking people to support. I used to be sitting in the library all day, spending more time fundraising than actually doing my assignments.
Yeah.
But that was the start of charity for me. It's strange that I bumped into charity and I got involved and introduced through trekking and hiking, and that's very much what I do as part of my job now. Like, climbing mountains, taking people on international expeditions, running marathons and all sorts. And I guess we'll talk about that soon, inshallah. But that's how it all started.
Okay, amazing. So you didn't really start small. You didn't think, oh yeah, for my first challenge event, I'll do like a 5K run or something. You're like, I'm gonna go Everest, right? So that's like really amazing that you had such high standards.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, I guess there was an opportunity that I saw, and I said yes. I could have said no, and I think if I didn't take that opportunity, my last 15 years would have probably been very different. It wasn't the actual Everest trek that I initially signed up to. I actually signed up to trek to K2 base camp, which is the highest mountain in Pakistan, the second highest mountain in the world in Pakistan, to trek to the base camp of that mountain. And 1 week before the trek, the authorities refused me a trekking permit, and I was devastated. I'd raised over £10,000 at the time. I'd been in my local media, even BBC News had done a TV feature on me about my trek and the fundraising I was involved in. And then 1 week before the trek, to kind of deny me that opportunity of a lifetime, I was devastated. But another opportunity came about to trek to Mount Everest base camp instead, which was an even bigger opportunity. So I took that, and alhamdulillah, I guess the rest was history, and I've just achieved, alhamdulillah, so many things since then.
MashaAllah. So like at Penny Appeal is like a massive award-winning charity. They've come out of nowhere in the last 10 years, mashallah, doing amazing work. Tell me, like, you're head of challenge events. So like, I've been involved in the charity industry for a long time. There'll be a lot of charities that do not even have like someone responsible for it. So what do you actually classify as a challenge event, and what does that mean? Like on a day-to-day basis, what do you do?
So challenge events are fundraising opportunities. These are sporting events, activities, adventures, essentially opportunities for people to get out of their comfort zone, challenge themselves, do fun and exciting things, and raise money for good causes. So they come essentially in 4 categories. So we have run events. These are marathons, 5Ks, 10Ks, which people can walk, jog, or run. We have treks, so hikes. These are mountain walks. So these are local, Snowdon, Ben Nevis, Scafell Pike, and also international treks like Kilimanjaro and trekking to Mount Everest base camp. Then we also have cycling events. Then we also have adrenaline events, which are the things like skydives and zip lines. So we have these 4 type of events: so run, cycle, hike, and adrenaline events. So my job is to manage these portfolio of events. So it's organizing the events. It's also managing the fundraising activity, which links to all of our projects and causes. I mean, last year we raised about £1 million from challenge events alone.
Wow.
And I think that's the added benefit of having a dedicated team for challenge events. And I think a lot of the Muslim charities in the sector probably lack that resource at the moment. But I think because Penny Appeal actually invested in my expertise and my passion for challenge events, alhamdulillah, it's worked out very well, and we're constantly growing and doing more. So essentially my day-to-day activity is ensuring the smooth running of each event, but a lot of it's people management. For example, right now we have a team of people who are running the London Marathon in October. So it's kind of managing these people, supporting them, helping them achieve their goals. There's a lot of recruitment involved, as in reaching out to clubs, organizations, the wider community, public social media, and trying to get people to sign up to challenge events. Once people sign up, it's kind of coaching them in fundraising. For some people, fundraising is straightforward, but for some people, the whole idea of asking people for money is difficult. Particularly right now in lockdown, where there's a financial crisis, and people are saying, how can we ask people for money because people don't want to give? At the same time, right now it's Ramadan, it's the busiest time in the calendar for us, so we're trying to optimize fundraising by equipping our fundraisers with resources, whether that's digital resources, motivation, spiritual reminders, helping them make the most of this month, making sure that every single day of the month they're collecting funds. So throughout the year, there's a lot of strategy involved as well. It's planning not just this year's events, but 2021, 2022, because international expeditions, for example, take a lot of time to plan and organize. And then there's also people who are signing up to an event. If we're wanting someone to sign up to trek to Mount Everest Base Camp, they're not going to do it if it's in a few months' time. They've got to think, okay, 12 months, 18 months. So we're planning our events that far in advance. So there's a lot of sort of strategy involved as well. And there's, of course, the relationship building of hundreds and thousands of people that we have to try and maintain. So when someone completes a Snowdon trek or the local 5K, we want to ensure that they feel, actually, we had an exceptional, positive, enriching fundraising journey with Penny Appeal. So the next time we want to do a challenge, okay, Haroon, we're coming back to you. And that's the sort of level of rapport we want to build with our supporters. And so there's a lot of work involved, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, mashaAllah. I think I spoke to the leadership team at Penny Appeal, and I was really impressed by that kind of forward thinking, that kind of investment in people and all this stuff. I think it's wonderful the way you guys are operating. What I wanted to ask is that I heard something that you ran the London Marathon, and the first time you ran it, you didn't like it. Is that true?
Yeah, so I signed up to run the 2012 London Marathon. I was never a runner. I actually thought running was boring. I used to run occasionally. I used to be I used to kickbox back in the days. I used to compete in kickboxing, so I used to run a little bit as part of my physical training for fights. But in terms of distance running, that definitely wasn't me. But I signed up to run the London Marathon in 2012. It was the year of the London Olympics 2012, and I signed up to run with Teenage Cancer Trust. And because I was working on a teenage cancer ward at the time, it just seemed like a really cool thing to tick off a bucket list, do it as a one-off. But 26 miles is a long way to go, and I underestimated the distance, thinking, I'm a fit guy, I've trekked Mount Everest Base Camp, and I'm a kickboxer, how hard can a marathon be? When I got to mile 18, 19, I really found out. And I remember being at mile 18, and I told myself from mile 18, I'm never going to do this again.
Wow.
The last 8 miles of that marathon, it's a blur now. I hardly even remember it. I just had so much cramp, so much pain, and I was expecting to see my family members at certain points of the race. We had organised for them to see me at mile 19, at cheer points, at mile 20, etc. And I didn't see them. I thought they didn't turn up, so I just lost my motivation, demoralized, and slugged myself through the end. And I've completed the race, and I was happy, of course, but I told myself never again. Um, but the following year, my father passed away. He suffered after a car accident, and it kind of turned my world upside down. And I found myself reflecting quite a bit at this part of my life about the here and now, and particularly like one hadith kind of really resonated with me. The hadith about the five before five, taking advantage of youth before old age and health before sickness, etc. And I thought, what, my father is no longer with us, and this is unexpected, but at the same time, what, this can happen to any of us. And right now with the coronavirus, particularly, we're seeing this, that people, where we're losing a lot of lives, and this could be us. I think at that time I just realized that I want to do more in my life, and even though I decided not to run, I felt that running was a great way to honor my father. So I was compelled to put my shoes back on and run for good causes in his memory. And I think at the start, I think running was a good way for me just to cope with the grief. But it turned out that running was an avenue to fundraise and honor him through sadaqah jariyah. And I think it's been 8 years now, and every charitable venture I take on, I dedicate that to my father. And I think that's one thing that I hope to carry on doing, and inspire other people as well to honor their loved ones through charity. It's a beautiful gift that Allah has given us, sadaqah jariyah, and it's a great way to honor them.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Really, really wonderful that, inshallah, when you meet your dad again, he's going to be like, whoa, that's a lot of cash you raised, son, inshallah. So that's like really, really amazing, man. Allah accept it from you guys. What I wanted to ask is, you kind of mentioned mile 18, where you were just like, this, I ain't doing this again. I'm done with this. Like, at that point, when you still got 8 miles, and most of us can't even walk 8 miles, right? Like, how do you carry on? How do you get to the finish line? How do you not just say, I'm done. My body's saying I'm finished. Just leave it. Forget it.
I think you've got to get to Westminster. You'll be stuck at Canary Wharf otherwise at mile 18. I think when you've got a goal in mind, regardless of how you get there, whether you crawl, whether you run, walk, you've got to get yourself there. And I think a lot of that is your mental preparation before an event. You know it's going to be tough, and you say, you know what, I'm going to do this. When it gets tough, these are my mental strategies. I'm going to remember my cause, or I'm going to remember this, or I'm going to remember the sadaqah jariyah, or I'm going to remember the support that people have given with the donations. And then there's your own, your personal sort of pride that you don't want to let yourself down. Like for me, myself, yes, I run for charity, but an important part of why I do things is, your own physical performance. I like pushing myself to the limits, and I have my own, goals in mind with regards to time, and that's another thing that another reason why I run. And I think 8 miles when you're suffering with a lot of cramp is a long way to go. I think you've just got to dig deep, remember why you're doing things, and just push yourself to get there to the end. And it's not the only time I've struggled. I mean, even people say, oh yeah, you make marathons look easy and you've run so many now, it must be a walk in the park. But no, every time you do it, it's still hard. And even your training is even harder.
Yeah.
You might run 26 miles in a marathon on one day, but you've got to put in 500 miles in training for 3-4 months. And that's the hard work. And that's what a lot of people miss. So I've got a big challenge planned later in the year to run 4 marathons in the space of 5 weeks, but I've been training since December for that. So sometimes people don't kind of appreciate or understand, oh yeah, 26 miles is running again. But the grit and the time you've got to put in, every other day or every day, and then the long runs on the weekends, it consumes all your time, and you've got to it's like being a full-time athlete, but trying to do your full-time job at the same time, and, being a father and being a husband and trying to juggle all of that. It's difficult.
It reminds me of something Tony Robbins said. He said that people get rewarded in public for what they do in private. And I think that's what it's like, isn't it? Where on that day where you do the marathon, everyone's like, wow, Haroon, you did a great job and everything. But really all the work just happens in the private when you're running on the streets and you're running on the treadmill all on your own, and no one's there with you, no one's, watching and stuff. So really amazing the time and effort you put in, I think. mashallah. So one thing I wanted to ask you was just regarding Everest. Like, how did how did that come about in the sense that were you not put off by the sheer fact that Everest is the biggest mountain in the earth?
So I think I alluded to this earlier. The trek I initially signed up to was the K2 base camp trek, but because that got cancelled, I ended up doing Everest.
Hmm.
Just to clarify, it's trekking to Mount Everest base camp. I'm not climbing to the summit of Everest. That's a different thing.
Yeah.
Climbing to the summit of Everest is something that professional climbers do, and that takes actually months of living on a mountain to actually get to the top. So it is a difficult trek. It's an almost 2 week trek. Just living on a mountain for a couple of weeks, and I think the idea of like adventure, visiting a new country, being in the Himalayas, amongst the highest peaks in the world, is just so exciting. I've been fortunate enough to have done that trek twice now. I went again 2 years ago with Penny. We took a team of 34 people out there to hike, and I never thought I'd be visiting that region of the world again. But when you're standing amongst snow-capped mountains that are, 8,000 meters high, and you're so small, and it kind of puts into perspective, what we are in life in comparison to the bigger picture. We're so small and insignificant, and Allah is so big and huge in what He has created, mashaAllah, and it kind of just hits home.
Okay, amazing. So you told me about Everest, right? Like one thing I'm wondering is that this is not one of those treks where you start in the morning, you get to base camp, and then you walk kind of down at the evening, right? So for me, I'm just wondering, like, how do you take people who are just everyday Muslims and then go and live on a mountain? I mean, do you guys have toilets there? What's it like being up there?
Very interesting question. Firstly, because most of the people we take on international expeditions aren't athletes, aren't mountaineers. These are novices, first-time climbers, and for some of these people, it's actually the first time they're actually going away from home, or first time even camping. So for someone camping for the first time, as in camping but in harsh conditions and sometimes in cold, or having to withstand the elements, it's a big challenge. A trek like Everest Base Camp is quite a commercial trek, so you don't actually have to camp. You actually sleep in tea houses along the route of the mountain, and of course the level of resources in these tea houses become less as you get further and further through the trek. For Everest, we're trekking almost 2 weeks, so we're trekking like 10 days to base camp, and then 3 days down. So being away from your bed for one is difficult. Then dealing with altitude, which is the most problematic issue at these high altitude treks, which make you feel very, very sick. They make you lose your appetite. They can make you feel unwell. They can make you feel dizzy, etc. But of course, eating, drinking becomes difficult. It might be a little bit easier on Everest because you're sleeping in tea houses, but if you're climbing Kilimanjaro, for example, you're actually having to stay in tents. So sleeping becomes very difficult. And of course, they do provide us with chemical toilets, which are carried by the porters. So these are,
Chemical toilets, okay.
like small, like little pop-up Portaloo type of tent toilets.
And there's guys who carry these up the mountain for us.
Yeah, so if we're 30 people trekking, there's more than 100 people as part of the porter team just taking our resources, carrying our tents, carrying the toilets, carrying the water, the food, carrying our not our backpacks but our resources, etc. So it's such a massive operation just to help us get up the mountain.
Wow.
But on Kilimanjaro, yeah, we're camping, and they carry our portaloos. I mean, for some people, they'd prefer to go in the wild, and sometimes it's easier. I'm one of them sort of people,
Okay.
And you have to do that. But I guess for the women, that's not possible, and they have to use these portaloos, chemical toilets. So there's the struggle of climbing a mountain. That's the physical challenge, but it is very much that challenge of discomfort that you have to endure. But I guess, we're doing this for charity, and it kind of it's a great way of reminding ourselves why we're doing this. Often we're fundraising for refugee causes, people who are living in crisis after disasters or war, conflict, etc. And people have to go through life without a home, or life without clean water, or the absence of comfortable beds. So I think that's a good somewhat simulation that on a mountain we're having to enjoy this difficult, and we're constantly reminded by the reasons why we're doing something. So yeah, it is quite a struggle, and you miss home. And I guess when you go back home after a long trek, you really understand and appreciate the luxury we have at home.
Amazing. One of the things we talk a lot about is leadership. And what I'm wondering is, when you take a group of people like that, because human beings, you've got different human beings, right? I remember going on a Hajj and we were like in a luxury package, and then there were still people who were complaining that we didn't have tea one night, and you've got different people that you're dealing with, right? So talk to me a little bit about the leadership required when you're taking a group of people like that through a difficult situation, and what have you learned about leadership from it?
This is probably one of the most difficult things that people don't understand, like managing people. They say, what, you know your brother when you travel with them. Try traveling with 30 different people. And of course we take a lot of women on the mountains as well, and women have their needs as well. We have to be sensitive, so it can be really challenging. Of course, people are tested. We're having to go through the difficulty of the trek itself. People are missing home, they're emotional. And it's very easy to kind of point fingers and blame people if something goes wrong. It's very easy to kind of vent your frustration to the person you're sharing a tent with. Or very easy, yeah, Haroon's the group leader, we're just going to drill him. So, yeah, I get a lot of stick. I think what I try to do is, when I'm on these trips, whether I'm on an international expedition, living for 2 weeks on a mountain, or spending a one-day trek, try and connect with as many people as you can. If we're taking 100 people up Ben Nevis, my job on the day is to try and say Assalamu alaikum to every single person, and say hello, how are you, where are you from, why are you doing this, and try and connect with someone. And I guess you can do that to a greater level when you're living with someone on a mountain for a couple of weeks. But I think rapport building, relationship building, and really showing appreciation to each individual for what they're doing. And sometimes people want that appreciation, because people are leaving their families, taking time off work, and it's not just that 1 week that they're climbing Kilimanjaro. It's the last 12 months that they've spent physically training and fundraising, so they've given up a lot. And I think sometimes, as charity representatives or leaders, it's important that we don't take that for granted. These are very valuable people. They've given up a lot. And I think sometimes we just got to show them that appreciation, show them that love. And sometimes that's difficult. On the last mountain trek, for example, that we did, Kilimanjaro, we had a big group of about 30 people, and I was the only charity rep. And a lot of things kind of went wrong on that trip. We were faced with lots of medical complications. We were faced with, a mad snowstorm at the top of Kilimanjaro, and we had to turn people away from getting to the top, even though they were just like 30 seconds from the very summit.
Wow.
And you can imagine the emotions that people kind of endure when they've spent so long mentally preparing for that goal. And that goal isn't just climbing Kilimanjaro, but in their heads, it's like getting a picture at the summit of Kilimanjaro. When they're denied that opportunity, it's beyond comprehension. So things become very, very sort of heated, and things can kind of become a little bit ugly. And sometimes, you don't prepare for these sort of things on mountains, and sometimes you can't deal with them. And sometimes you just have to try and patch things up and do your best. You can't keep everyone happy. Even sometimes now I kind of dwell and think I should have done this and I should have said that. And some people think, Haroon, chill out. You know what? You've done an amazing job. You've done everything you can, but you can't always keep everyone happy. And that's another thing that I have to try and settle for as well. It's a difficult job, leading people. It's something that I enjoy. One thing that I appreciate and find rewarding the most is helping people achieve their goals. When someone completes that marathon or when someone climbs that mountain, and when you've been influential in helping them achieve their goals, and when you've been the one telling them, no, you can't give up, or I'm going to drag you up that mountain, that's a special experience.
Yeah, amazing. I've seen some of the videos where you're like talking to the people, reminding them why they're doing this, and I think it's wonderful the way you're kind of attaching them to that vision and really being there for them. I mean, a lot of the stuff we've talked about is like big mountains, big peaks, massive numbers. If I'm watching this and I'm thinking, you know what, like I want to give Sadaqah Jariyah for someone in my family and I want to get into this kind of stuff, how does a beginner start, right? And let's make it even more tougher for you. How does a beginner like me start, who's not really into that whole health thing and all of that kind of running and marathons? And I've just the thought of a marathon, I'm like, let me close this laptop, right? So how does a beginner start thinking about challenge events?
What we say is there's something for everyone. Not everything is about human performance and pushing yourself that far. There's always something that you can do that's relative and realistic for yourself. So like I mentioned, like we don't have just marathons. We have like 5Ks, for example. Like, you have couch to 5K initiatives, encouraging people to walk, jog, or run 5 kilometers, for example. 5 kilometers is an hour walk. For some people, that might be very straightforward. For some people, that could be the biggest challenge of their life. So we say, set your goals. And we encourage people to actually consult with us and, have some sort of a needs or goal-based analysis where we can assess, what your goal is and what you want to achieve and what's realistic for yourself. And, for some people, they don't want to climb a mountain or run or do anything physically active. Yeah. And that's totally fine. Maybe there's other ways you can get involved in charity, and that's like through volunteering your time to support initiatives, or whether that's donating or promoting and raising awareness. Even right now, we have virtual challenges in the absence of events that have been cancelled and postponed. We've set up virtual events so people from their homes can get active and do fun things, stay motivated, even in the month of Ramadan. And that's what we're pushing right now. And for some people, they don't want to trek overseas, but a one-day hike up Mount Snowdon could be a goal that they look forward to. And we have people of all abilities, ages, different backgrounds taking part. I mean, my mum, she's almost 60 odd, but she joined us for our annual Mount Snowdon trek last year. She didn't get to the top, but she was happy that she managed to walk half of it. And I'm so proud of her. And that's not the first time she's pushed herself. She joined me for the Birmingham 10K 3 years ago, along with my siblings and a couple of my aunties. She didn't run it, she walked it. And you know what? Again, I'm very, very proud of her for doing that. And last year, she came to Palestine for the Palestine Marathon, and she took part in the 10K event there. Again, she walked it. That's testimony that, anyone can have a go. It's very easy to kind of make excuses, and it's very easy to kind of discredit ourselves. And I think that's one thing that often Muslims do too much, especially in my area of work, where I'm constantly drilling like health messages and health promotion activities, sports, saying do this, do that. And sometimes people might get bored of me. Oh, Haroon's trying to get us to climb another mountain, or he's asking for money. But you know what? People will say, oh, me, marathon, me, mountain. Like, you've got to believe that, yes, you can. Give yourself a go. Don't discredit or demotivate yourself. Anyone can have a go. Anyone can do something if you put your mind to it. And for some people, exercise, fitness, getting healthier is a goal. But when you kind of add charity in the mix, like you've doubled the incentive and the drive and the motivation to do something. It's no longer just about yourself and your personal goal. It's also about helping that widow in Bangladesh in the refugee camp, or supporting that orphan child in Syria, or the person in Pakistan who hasn't got clean water to drink. And when you've got good causes to push yourself, I think that's something that people can really sort of cherish. And that's something that one thing that I've really cherished. And we've built a massive community of people here now through Penny Appeal who love staying involved in running and mountain climbing and doing all of these charitable ventures. It's also a social experience as well. I mean, the friends that I've gained through charity, subhanAllah, it's amazing. And like I say, it's a community of people that we have built, and we welcome and encourage people to get involved. It is a beautiful thing.
I think it's very, very interesting what you said there, actually, that, most of the time when people are trying to do health and fitness for themselves, like, they do it for a little while and they kind of fizzle out and stuff. But I can imagine, like, if you're actually doing it with the intention for helping someone else, and then you're trying to raise money, and then you're doing health and fitness, like, it could be very, very powerful from a mindset perspective. So that's really interesting. I mean, one of the things I thought of doing was actually jumping out of a plane, right? Because it requires no effort. But just the psychology of doing that. Like, have you done any skydives? Do you guys like promote that kind of stuff? How does that work?
Yeah, we have an annual skydive, and this is the option that we give to those people who say, I'm not exercising, or I'm not training, I'm not doing a run. We're like, fine, just jump out of an airplane with a parachute.
Have you done? Have you done it? Have you got a fear of heights or something?
No, I've skydived as well. The first skydive, well, I've only skydived once, and it was with Teenage Cancer Trust a few years back before I joined Penny Appeal. It's one of the most sort of exhilarating experiences, just falling out of an aeroplane, free fall. Of course, it's frightening, and that's why people do it for charity. And then we have zip lines, and we have these as annual events, and people can skydive. It's an annual skydive for Palestine that we do. I think when you're falling out of an aeroplane, I just remember falling out. Everything kind of felt like it was in slow motion, even though you were like sort of like terminal velocity. I remember falling out of the plane and like somersaulting, because like you somersault at the start before you fall, and just remember seeing the plane getting further and further away from me. But I remember that in slow motion, and it's an epic feeling that I have. And I totally recommend it for anyone who wants to kind of experience something exciting. It will give you the thrills, and if you can do it as part of a good cause as well, you know what? Join the annual Penny Appeal Skydive, which we do. It's usually in July, but we've postponed it to August now because of the coronavirus, and we hope that it'll take place in August, inshallah.
Amazing. So obviously, like doing the event is one part of it. A huge part of it is actually raising funds, right? So what kind of tips, tricks, advice, guidance do you give to people who say, right, I've chosen, this is the challenge event I want to do, but I've never done fundraising. Like, how do I get this money? I want to raise a lot of money. How do I do it?
So fundraising itself is such a huge concept, and there's so many different ways of collecting funds. Of course, right now, online fundraising seems to be the most popular way and probably the most effective way to fundraise. So we encourage people to, make good use of social media. Social media is so easy to fundraise on. It's just a matter of sharing your Just Giving page. But we encourage people not just to share the Just Giving page, because that's too easy and people will get bored of plain content. It's about kind of sharing your journey, your personal story, the reasons why you're doing something. For me, I've always got a reason for doing something, whether that's the cause or whether that's my personal motivation. So it's about kind of sharing your stories. If you've got a special reason to run or a special reason to do something, you've got to kind of sell that and not be shy to tell people why you're doing something. And your training, your ups and downs of what you're doing and why you're doing it, you've got to kind of spread these stories and help people connect with you so that they can donate towards your cause. We encourage people to explore community fundraising initiatives, whether that's bucket collecting or organizing charity dinners, car washes, etc. One thing is, doing the minimum sponsorship, which is often what people get fascinated with. Skydiving minimum sponsorship, £500. Mount Snowdon minimum sponsorship, £300. But what we forget is that the minimum sponsorship is the least amount that you're required to do for your charity. But doing a challenge isn't about doing the minimum. It's about, pushing yourself and getting maximum reward. So that's one thing that I always lead by practice, and I always drill that into everyone that I work with, and very much now in the month of Ramadan as well, saying, you know what, earn your maximum reward, aim as high as you can, and try and do more reward, because charity is worship. And sometimes people kind of don't see it as that. We think worship, we think salah, we think dhikr, remembrance of Allah, Quran. Charity is worship. If you're donating, that's sadaqah in worship. But also fundraising, encouraging other people to give, that it's also charitable worship. So you know what, we should kind of embrace this, and we encourage people to compete for good deeds. We have leaderboards, for certain events, and we encourage people to compete and raise as much as they can.
I think, you mentioned like basically having high standards. Like if it's £500 minimum, go out there and really push that. And something you're pushing, which seems crazy to me and to a lot of people, is that the fast is a difficult fast in the UK and these kind of places, in the sense that it's 18 hours long, you feel thirsty, the weather's getting nicer, right? So how does an insane person like you come to the conclusion that during this time of fasting, while I'm fasting in Ramadan, I am gonna run 260 kilometers? Like, how do you get to that?
So yeah, that's a challenge I've taken on, to run 260 kilometers this Ramadan, inshallah. I'm about 100 kilometers into it already. For me, I think, one, like, I'm going to stay active in Ramadan anyway, because it's important for me to stay active, but not to this level. I've never run this much in Ramadan before. In Ramadan, I'm not trying to get fit. I'm just trying to maintain my level of fitness and trying to make sure that I don't lose strength, don't lose endurance. It's just a matter of just keeping the legs ticking. Later this year, I'd planned to run 4 marathons in 5 weeks, starting in September. So I already started training for that, and I needed to kind of maintain my mileage in Ramadan. So I was looking to run 100 miles in Ramadan, but not as much as I am doing now. But anyway, the 2.6 challenge came about because London Marathon was cancelled, and they launched this initiative to try and encourage people to do fun, adventurous, crazy things using the numbers 2 and 6. So I think 3 days into Ramadan, I think whilst I was actually running on the third day, I thought 260 kilometers. Then we could do the quick maths. That's about 10 kilometers per day. And I thought, actually, like, I could give that a go. So I thought, yeah, let's give it a go. For me, like, if I'm going to raise money, like, I've got to do something big, and I've got to do something that's going to push myself. Otherwise, they're going to be like, oh, Haroon's like asking for money again. What's he doing? Like running a marathon. But you've done that last time. Like, I've got to do something different, and that's why I've got to find new ways to push myself, crazy things that people are going to think, wow, oh, that's inspirational, or, wow, that's mad. Haroon, you're mad, yeah, we're going to give you money, and because it's a good cause as well. And that's what I'm trying to do. So yeah, running 260 kilometers sounds crazy, is crazy, it's tough, it's hard physically, but it's also hard just staying motivated. It's 4 p.m. right now when we're doing this interview, but in 2 hours time, I'm going to be getting ready for my run. I run at 7 p.m. so that I finish my run just before iftar, which gives me the opportunity to drink and eat straight away. One of the most difficult things is actually maintaining hydration. I lose anything up to 1.5 liters in water on a 10k run. I weigh myself before and after my run so that I can see and record my fluid loss, so that I know how much to drink in the night. And it means in the night I can't go to sleep until I've drank about 3.5, 4 liters. So I don't sleep until my urine actually becomes clear, and that's of course the way to measure your sort of hydration level as well. So it is difficult. It's not just doing the run itself, but it's adapting your entire day to ensure that you can run safe. Because I need to be able to run every day to ensure that I complete the distance in time. I had to miss 1 day of running a couple of days ago because I had a headache, and it must have been linked to dehydration. So I've missed one day. It means I'm a bit behind on my miles, but I've got to maintain consistency, averaging 10 kilometers per day, so that I can kind of get back on track. So yeah, yesterday, alhamdulillah, we completed 100 kilometers with 160 to go. We're fundraising for an amazing cause. That's my motivation, and
What is the
donations have
cause?
been
Tell us
flying in,
about it.
subhanallah.
What's the cause?
So I'm fundraising for Penny Appeal's emergency response campaign. This is to help people who are suffering the consequences of war, natural disasters, and extreme poverty. So people in Syria, Gaza, Yemen, the Rohingya refugees. Very much now, so our emergency coronavirus appeal, helping people who were already in crisis but now facing the crisis of coronavirus. We're distributing, hygiene packs and food items to those who are suffering in lockdown. We're on the ground in all of these crisis countries, and we're encouraging people to support and donate. And that's why I'm fundraising this Ramadan. My target is to raise £25,000.
Wow.
We're beyond halfway. Whether people want to donate £1 or donate, £1,000, the opportunity is there to support a good cause, and that's the reason why I'm doing this challenge. I'm enduring some difficulty, and yes, 260 kilometers in Ramadan sounds mad, but some people don't have a choice but to run from bombs and run from natural disasters. Some people don't have a choice but to be thirsty and hungry. I'm doing it voluntarily because there's people out there who don't have a choice, and I'm doing it for them.
MashaAllah, it's very, very noble. And this is exactly the reason why, when I heard the challenge, like I said, I knew about you before, but when I heard the challenge, I'm like, look, this is beautiful. This is leadership. This is really going out there. So it's great that you, mashallah, did that. What I want to ask, just as we kind of close now, is do you have any tools or resources or apps or books or things that you recommend to people, either if they're interested in health and fitness, if they're interested in fundraising, just generally, what are the kind of resources and tools that you use and recommend a lot?
There's two things. We don't have an app or anything as such directly for sort of penny appeal fundraising. But in terms of staying active and healthy, the recommended app is Strava. So this is a fitness app which can be used to track, record, and monitor walking, jogging, running, cycling, or even your own sort of home workouts. It's a very sort of social app as well, so you can connect with friends, family from your social networks and see what other activities people are doing, and you can like and comment on their activities. People will give you positive encouragement, and you can also see a timeline of your progress. You can set goals, milestones, and the app will tell you how you're getting on. For me personally, I found this very, very beneficial over the last couple of years. I've had, struggles of my own sort of when it comes to fitness and goals. Over the last few years, I've spent so much time helping other people achieve their goals that I've neglected my own sort of recreational time and not given enough time to myself to exercise. I've changed that this year, and I'm kind of training 24/7. Alhamdulillah, finally I've kind of got down to it. But just being on that app and seeing some of the incredible mileage that other people, friends have been putting in, like just kept me motivated. Thinking, I wake up in the morning and think, I'm too lazy to get out and run, but I see what someone else is doing, and I think every day I see that, and eventually it gives me the intention to go out. And now I'm in a good place, and alhamdulillah, I've kind of got out of my dip that I had. But I know so many people say it to me now, that when they see my activities, when they see that, oh, Haroon, you've run 500 miles already this year and it's only April, or you know what, you've run 40 miles this week already and it's only like Saturday. You know what, like people get motivation from what I'm doing. But if you join that app, you'll see what other people are doing, and people will give you lots of encouragement. So Strava is a wonderful app. Or we also have like a Penny Appeal Team Orange Club on the app where people can connect to, and it's predominantly Muslim people, guys, girls, young, old, and people exercising in Ramadan as well. And it's great to see. It's a bit of a community, so you feel part of something and you don't feel alone in what you want to do. And which we try to make things social. We have like WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups, so people kind of can relate to one another and connect and gain inspiration from others as well. So we don't have any other sort of such resources, but when people do sign up to our events, we work with them personally to support them, to help them achieve their goals, and we offer sort of fundraising resources. Um, so I think if people do want to get involved, I definitely encourage people to connect with me personally, and they can do that directly through me, through my social media, at Haroon Mota, or just visiting the Penny April website and clicking on challenges and looking at all of the incredible opportunities that are available, and get involved.
Okay, amazing. I think what you're doing is so inspiring, mashallah, and it's all for a great cause. I know that there's lots of people watching, so I would advise every one of them to get involved, to support you financially. And they can go to your justgiving.com /run Mota run, and I'll put the link in the thing as well. So I think it's a wonderful cause, and I think everyone that's watching should support it. I've tried to support it as well, so I'd recommend everyone do that. So, Haroon, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here today. Jazakallah khair for all your time and all your wonderful advice.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for having me.
Barakallah
See you
feekum.
another time, inshallah.
Inshallah. So, brothers
Assalamu
and sisters, this is the Muslim CEO show. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Lots of amazing gems that Harun shared with us. Lots of inspiring stuff of how we can be better as human beings and achieve lots of things for other people, inshallah. So, if you haven't already done so, please remember to subscribe and check out the free training at muslimceo.com. Once again, Harun, Jazakallah khair, and we'll see you soon. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.